I'm
identifying houses of worship, churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services. Some governors have deemed liquor stores and abortion clinics as essential, but have left out churches and other houses of worship. It's not right. So I'm correcting this injustice and calling houses of worship essential. I call upon governors to allow our churches and places of worship to open right now. If there's any question, they're going to have to call me, but they're not going to be successful in that call. These are places that hold our society together and keep our people united. The people are demanding to go to church and synagogue, go to their mosque. Many millions of Americans.
I worship in the Oval Office. That's the only place my God is. So I'm going to need access.
Ministers, pastors, rabbis, imams, and other faith leaders will make sure that their congregations are safe as they gather and pray. I know them well. They love their congregations. They love their people. They don't want anything bad to happen to them or to anybody else. The governors need to do the right thing and allow these very important, essential places of faith to open right now for this weekend. If they don't do it, I will override the governors.
Professional.
In America, we need
You're going to override the governors.
Not less. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is that it? You taking off? Courage. So, and now here's Kaylee Macaroni.
It's a pleasure to join you today. That was a great announcement from President Trump. I'd like to introduce Dr. Birx right now. She has a wonderful presentation pursuant to Reopening America.
Hey,
some great data to share with you, so I'll let her kick this off.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Okay, so that was only 50 minutes late.
Please. I wanted to start out with a summary of the number of Americans we have lost to date.
Constitutionally, he can't, but
the exciting thing for all of us
we don't stop the president from doing anything.
That's
how this country works.
And I think it both is a real aspect of the amazing healthcare workers.
This is not about opening churches. This is about Trump getting votes. That's all. There's nothing he can do to open the churches. The governors have that power.
Over time. Next slide. The thing that has decreased significantly over the last month is new hospitalizations. We can see now that there's over a 50% decline in new hospitalizations. Although every region of the country is different, we are encouraged to see these new hospitalizations
still 21,000 new hospitalizations from coronavirus.
I've talked before about the extensive surveillance that CDC has made available to this country. This is looking at their syndromic surveillance from emergency rooms. You can see that both COVID-like illnesses, shown in the orange and shown in the blue, influenza-like illness, taking up both of those cases together, you can see significant declines week over week. A number of people coming to the emergency room with these illnesses. It goes along with our new hospitalizations. What we like to do is triangulate data, put data together from multiple sources to see if we're seeing the same trends so that we can ensure that we're making progress together. Next slide. This is their influenza-like illness surveillance system that has been up and running for more than a decade now. You can see each of the influenza peaks of this last year. I think that's very important to remind people of because we had influenza A, influenza B, and then we had COVID-like illness. And while we know it's COVID, that's the last orange peak. What we really find encouraging is across the country, we are below baseline. Why is that particularly important? Now, these are reported state by state, county by county. So each county will be able to see precisely where they are. And then if there's changes in this, it becomes yet again an early alert system. So I've showed you two early alert systems. One of them, emergency rooms visits based on our syndromic illness qualifications that the CDC has up on their website. And then the influenza-like illness. And again, to the American people, all of these are available on the CDC website under COVID-19 cases and surveillance. Next slide. Now, I want to show you, I'm going to go through these very quickly. This is where we started. This is influenza-like illness. The red, and the darker the red, the more significant the influenza-like illness is in that state. So you want to get to green. So this is the week ending March 28th. I think many of us can remember what that week was, and this was when we were at the very beginning of our acceleration into logarithmic phase. Next slide. This is April 4th. You're starting to see some of the states already turn green. Next slide. April 11th, more of the country. Next slide. April 18th. Next slide. April 25th. Next slide. May 2nd, and you can see, and I really call your attention to, there's a orange area on this slide, and you can see that it's the Maryland area, and we've been calling that out for a while, the high plateau in Maryland. You can also see Minnesota and
sorry, guys.
Wisconsin. Next slide.
I have a new
and then
mouse.
You can see Wisconsin still. You can see Maryland is
and it
yellow.
turned my mic
Next
off.
slide.
I said, hello, Carol. Thank you very much. I enjoy
a lot of slides quickly,
your
but
presence
I think
here
we
as
can
well.
see as a country we have decreasing amount
Thank you for
of
letting me
illness,
know I was
both at the
muted, guys.
emergency
Go back
room
to the
and
slide.
reported through the influenza-like illness. Two of the
We've seen
surveillance
Dr.
systems
Scarf.
that
Go
the
back to the
CDC
slides.
has
Stay with
up
the
and running.
slides,
These come
C-SPAN.
from the states, they come from the counties, and many of the states have these also on their websites. We talked earlier about how we had prioritized testings to the area that had the most significant disease. And you can see now Rhode Island has led all of the states. It's almost up to testing 12% of all of their citizens. That's followed by New York, and you can't see New York, but that's the very next one. New York, and then North Dakota.
We can't see New York?
So you can
Where's
see
New York?
that. Well, you could.
It's gone now.
Yeah, you can see that most of the high burden areas of the
there's no
United
New York. They just
States
left New York
had
off
more
the
than
map,
6%
off the graph.
testing. That's when I think you heard from Admiral
Because,
Giroir, we wanted
you know,
every state
Trump.
to test at least 2% of their population during May. You can see 100% of the states now are over 2% of their population. And we'll fix this slide so you can see every state, but many of the states now are over 4%.
Will we do that?
And
I don't
this is
think
just
we will.
after getting all the materials to ensure that they have adequate transport media and swabs. So we're encouraged by the progress that many of the governors and states have made in their testing of their population. It is also why we took the opportunity to really encourage governors, and it was to encourage governors to test 100% of the nursing home residents and staff, because many of our outbreaks that we have seen over the last 2 months have started in nursing homes. Next slide. Now, this is a complicated slide, but this is trying to show you how we triangulate data. So I took you through our surveillance systems. I've taken you now into the start of how we use
I can't even
laboratory
read that
data
on my
to really
screen, guys.
understand what's
You've got
happening
no chance.
both in the metros and at the state level. This is every single state. And you can see the triangles, the top part that you can see,
what
the
we
little
can see here is that there's
pieces
just
are the
too damn
diamonds.
many states.
That is where the states were in the number of positive tests. This is the nucleic acid test. This is diagnosing virus in your nose. You can see where it was 30 days ago and where it is now by the red squares. You can see a dramatic decline across the states, and indeed, New York City just 6 weeks ago was almost 40%. It is now for the first time as a New York State under 10%. And so this is the progress that we're making in both expanding testing, finding more people, but ensuring that we're getting testing rates at about 10%. This line.
Thanks, JC. I appreciate you being here. JC's one of our patrons.
42 states.
JC, you're in the new credits. Stick around till the end.
Less than 10% test positive on a rolling 7-day
POTUS would understand this.
Average.
Patricia,
now, again, I'm going
you
to
make
call
me
your
laugh.
attention to the top 3 states.
Okay.
The top 3 states with the
Let's see
largest
it.
percent, and this
Now,
is so you
we-
can all
we
make
only
your
have 2
decisions
of the
about
top 3 on the
going
slide for
outside
some
and
reason.
social distancing, potentially playing golf if you're very careful and you don't touch the flags and all of those issues, playing tennis with marked balls with just
Don't
one
touch the
other
flags?
person, so you're only touching your ball. We found really people who enjoy sports have been able to really adjust to
Good.
social distancing.
Except hockey.
But you can see the top 3 states are Maryland, the district, and Virginia.
Oh, good. Now C-SPAN's blocking
And so
us.
there is still significant virus
So-
circulating here. That
all
is
the states
followed by
again.
Nebraska,
Too many
Illinois
states.
because of Chicago, and what we've talked about before about Minnesota.
I can tell this one's North Carolina.
Those are our top states as far as still having high number of test positives. When I say high
swear to
number
God,
of
that was
test
the same slide.
positives, they're all under 20%. If I had shown you this slide 4 weeks ago,
Yeah, they're being very specific.
half
That's
of
an
the
excellent
country
point,
would have been
Steph.
over 20%. So this also shows progress, but also very clearly about the region we're living in right now.
Because as you
with
know,
disease.
Dr. Scarf
Next
says
slide.
Trump is really focused
Now, I
on
wanted
data.
you to see this as a metro because that's just a state level. So we look at this in multiple different ways. The number one metro
So this is every
with the
metro
highest
area.
positivity rate is the District of Columbia, which includes Northern
see if I can do
Virginia
anything about this.
and Maryland, Montgomery County, and PG County.
Not really.
That is followed by Baltimore,
That-
Chicago, and Minneapolis. And so these are the places where we have seen really a stalling or an increase
Columbus,
of cases
Ohio.
as in Minneapolis. You can see all the other
Okay,
metros.
so there you
all
go.
the other metros are almost all exclusively below 10%.
C-SPAN
so we see
doesn't
this
come
as
in
great
HD on the web
progress
for some
across the
reason,
board
so-
in the metro areas. Next slide. So we also look at daily cases and daily case numbers, and I know that you all know that that's a very erratic, and it depends sometimes on how the tests were reported, how the case were reported,
Or
and
the
so you
fact that we're
often
not
have to look
giving
at
out
it
enough
over a
tests.
3 or 7 day period. This is looking at daily cases on a 7-day rolling average. You can see the number one, at the top peak that has now come down dramatically, is the New York metro area. Underneath that, you can see our concerns about Chicago and our concern in the yellow line of the Washington, D.C. area, because these are two areas that went through their logarithmic phase and are now at a high plateau with an unchanging number of cases day over day. That's the orange line and the yellow line. You can see that the
Go back.
daily case numbers per 100,000 are below
Go
the
back,
yellow
C-SPAN.
line and the orange line of
Come on.
Washington, D.C. and Chicago.
No, we can't see that.
And that's New York,
There we go.
Boston, and many of the others. Providence is also up as a per 100,000. And that's the way we like to look at it because we can really then understand it in relationship to populations. The other groups that have very low levels that once had a peak, this is Detroit, very low level now. This is Boston in the gray, which has come way down also.
So Boston's
and
way
you
down
can see
here.
down here is Atlanta
Detroit's here.
and Miami.
No, that could be Detroit.
Next
It's
slide.
either the blue line or the blue line.
Now, sometimes, and I think recently
miss
there have been
hockey.
publications about where the world was before we started the Stop the Spread and before many states shut down. And just to take you back to that moment.
Yeah, nobody
on
else is
March
carrying
14th,
this live.
before Stop the Spread, this
Oh,
is
I wonder
showing
if it's on
New
the
York.
C-SPAN.
I didn't even put March
Could be on the
14th
C-SPAN
on there because
YouTube,
New
and
York
sometimes we get a
on
better
March
feed
14th
off of that. Hold on.
had less than 50 cases reported. Chicago had less than 10. Washington had less than 10. LA had less than 20. The large state at that time that had a significant number of cases was the Washington area, Washington state, which had 100 cases. On March 14th, we had about 500 cases distributed around the United States, not in any dramatic hotspot per se, but the majority of those cases and the hotspot at that moment was Washington state. This is how the New York metro area, which includes obviously
Woohoo,
northern
Washington
New
State.
Jersey,
What up?
northern parts of Pennsylvania, parts of Connecticut and Rhode Island, and the dramatic decline that they
Again,
had in the
C-SPAN,
number
when
of
she's
cases. And I know
gesturing
you know that also
at the
mortality
graph.
has started to decrease in that northern New Jersey and New York area. Next slide. But I wanted you to see how we bring all this information
146
together
new
on
cases
a daily
where
basis.
since yesterday, Amy?
The
Hi, Amy,
red
by the way.
line in this
Is that Washington
graphic
State?
are the emergency room
Okay,
visits.
look, a
so
graph.
those are the syndromic visits that I discussed with you at the beginning. The blue line is the test positive, and again, it's very erratic because of the reporting of when cases sometimes from the entire weekend are added on a Monday morning. And then you can see the actual
Monday.
case numbers
That's a Monday.
in the black bars. And so
Monday.
that's how we bring everything together. And what we want to see is all of the items trending down. We want to see the number
Good.
of positives that you find because we really have states now looking for asymptomatic cases. So we want to ensure that both asymptomatic cases, symptomatic cases are all declining as shown in the blue line, that emergency room visits are declining, and the actual case numbers are declining together.
Sunday, Amy.
And of course, then there's mortality behind
right back,
that in the green bars that are hard for you to see. Next slide. But this is the Washington area, and so that's why I want you to see that contrast. You can see there's not been that dramatic decline in the blue line.
Oh, that's the wrong
There's
Washington.
not been that dramatic decline in the black bars of cases, and there's not been a dramatic decline in the emergency room visits with COVID-like illnesses.
Show us Alabama.
So even though
Show us
Washington
Montgomery.
has remained closed, LA
They're out of
has
ICU
remained
beds.
closed, Chicago has remained closed, we still see these ongoing cases. And I've asked the CDC, and the CDC is working with the local areas in Chicago and this area in LA to really understand where are these new cases coming from and what do we need to do to prevent them in the future. Next slide.
I'm going to see if Kevin Lee Kitty will
This
come
is
visit.
Chicago, again, just to show you going up into this high plateau that has been fairly persistent. Next slide.
Sorry, you guys got a glimpse of the credits there.
And this is Los Angeles.
We have
so
new
you
closing
can get
credits.
a flavor of where we have concerns, of where cities have remained
Woohoo, Los
closed
Angeles.
and metros that have remained closed but have still persistent high number of cases. Next slide.
Guess where
So
I'm
then I
going this
wanted to
weekend,
talk to you
guys.
about outbreaks, because throughout this all, there's been a large part of America that has been in many states that have been really finding their outbreaks, containing those outbreaks by testing everyone and doing contact tracing, and then stopping them and stopping those outbreaks in their tracks. What we have been talking about everybody being able to do across the United States. And so this illustrates the counties that have had a 100% increase in new cases over the last 3 days. Now the reason
Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened.
see more and more
Okay, there we go.
graphics out there that talk about cases going up versus
Meat
cases
packing
going
plants.
down. Just to give you an
plants,
example of Wyoming, and I think
prisons.
many of the groups now have Wyoming as a red state of cases
That's got to be
going
a
up.
meat packing plant.
Wyoming 3 days
I
ago
don't know.
had 5 cases confirmed, and yesterday had 9. So they qualify almost and show up as this large increase. It's a good alert for us. We immediately look and see what exactly is happening at the state website. But you can see when you have very low number of cases, you can have a doubling from 5 to 10 number of cases and show up as a 100% increase. And so
Yeah.
each of these have to be investigated separately.
Well, that
to
depends
really
on which per
understand
capita
what
you're
this
looking
is.
at.
It is the way we find outbreaks in prisons. It's the way we have been finding outbreaks in nursing homes. And we have this graphic. It goes through all of the counties as well as, next slide.
Hey, Lanier, as well as next
So
slide.
this is one state's
She's done this
analysis.
before, as well as next slide.
And what they have shown, and they have been able to find each of their outbreaks,
That was a smooth
contain every
transition.
one of
You're
their
welcome.
outbreaks, close those outbreaks and call them closed cases.
There's meat
In
packing.
this case, the dark blue is community spread. The rest of it, 50%
Thank
of
God
their
they canceled that
cases
show.
have been coming from outbreaks that they've been able to contain. The largest group in this is meatpacking plants. And what they've been doing is going in and testing 100% of the individuals in the meatpacking plant.
They have
and
not.
also finding 100% of the individuals
What they've been doing
that are
is Trump signed an
associated
executive
with those
order saying
individuals
that
in
they
the
all had to go
meatpacking
back to
plant.
work.
They've been able to go into group housing, social gatherings. So just as we discuss all of this, and when you go out for this weekend of Memorial Day and you want to do some kind of social gathering, it's very important to maintain that 6 feet distance and very important to have your mask with you in case that 6 feet different distance cannot be maintained. But it also talks about long-term care facilities. Now, interestingly enough, 50% of their total cases, since they've been tracking, came from these outbreaks. Almost 70+%, 76 of all their mortality, though, came from these outbreaks. And this is why we have been really pushing both in the original
So
Open
that
Up
leaves
America
24,
again,
25%
in the testing
of deaths.
blueprint, we talk about proactive surveillance, proactive monitoring and testing in areas that you know are particularly susceptible to outbreaks. Every state has this knowledge now and this type of analysis. And so when they have these kinds of analysis, what we're asking them to do is proactively go and test everyone in meatpacking plants, to proactively go and test 100% of the residents and workers, and then a follow-up of the workers in every single long-term care
usually does
facility.
A pretty good job with this.
And this is to find the asymptomatic cases. I know CDC yesterday released that they thought 35%. We started with the understanding that we thought it was around 11 to 15% based on the experience with one of the princesses, but now we know it's at least 35. It may be greater than that because it may be so age dependent that there may be a lot of people under 30 that have the virus and are shedding the virus and aren't aware that they have the virus.
Which is why we should be testing asymptomatic.
Monitoring, proactive testing will become absolutely critical to find these asymptomatic cases. Next slide. So this is my last slide, and this is just to show
everything
you
is a shade of
what
light
an
blue
outbreak
except the prisons
looks
in
like.
bright red.
So if you look at this axis, it's normalized through 100,000 population. But you can see, this is what we want to see. We want to see very low case number. We want to see that they've identified an outbreak. They've tested 100%. They've contained 100%.
That's
and
Tennessee.
then they don't find any more cases. And so this is what's happening across the country, county by county. This
Dakota,
is a county map
Lincoln,
to really show you the work that's going on. And since
Minnesota,
the last 2 months,
Tennessee.
we've gone from, I think, less than 4,000 contact tracers to nearly 50,000 contact tracers. And this is what's been happening behind the scenes. But I really want to applaud the governors and state and the health and local, the health commissioners and the local health departments who have really been working quietly in an unassuming way to really find these cases, track these cases, isolate these cases,
what it's like in the county health
and ensure
building?
there's no additional spread.
Do you have any
and you
more
can
tests?
see in many of these instances, they've gone more than 2 weeks without any additional spread. And so this is what we are hoping goes across the United States. Now, we all have to admit it's going to be much more difficult in metro areas because you have to really identify where are those asymptomatic cases and how will you find them. And it's why there's been a lot of additional resources going into disadvantaged areas and to the federal community clinics to be able to proactively be able to test for this virus and find asymptomatic individuals. When someone gets sick with COVID, excuse me, when someone gets sick with COVID, you've heard the cases. Some of them have very high fevers.
That's a symptom.
And so they're not out walking around. So they may have been shedding virus for 1 or 2 days before they got significantly ill and they had to be in bed because they felt so terrible. Now think of that.
Or maybe they have a low-wage job with no sick pay, and so they have to work.
50% of the cases, they're only out for 2 of the days that they may be spreading virus. An asymptomatic individual that doesn't know they have COVID, they may be spreading and shedding the entire time that they're in the community. So instead of 2 days, it may be 6 days.
So you need to be banging on the lectern saying we need to test asymptomatic people.
35% that are asymptomatic that are out in the community is a much more opportunity for transmission than someone who is getting sick and is only out in the community for 2 days. And so we know we have to find both, and we've been working with states about what proactive surveillance would look like in this case to find people who are asymptomatic. But it's also why we continue to recommend to the public very clearly that you can't tell who's infected. And so that's why you have to continue to social distance.
Is that what we're sending to the public with the president not wearing a mask?
6 feet apart. I remember in the early days of HIV, people told me all the time that they knew who was infected. And I would say, you don't know who's infected. I could be infected. You're just saying you don't think I'm infected because I look healthy. There's a lot of healthy people out there with COVID that look healthy. And so we're asking continuously for you all to be outside, to enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. to play
I saw it on a
golf,
TV
to
show
hike,
last
as
night.
Dr. Fauci said, to play
can't
tennis
tell.
with mark balls.
They're capris.
And to be out with your families that you have been in the household with, and to even consider sharing social distance space as long as you have utensils that belong to individuals. And that maybe
Jason,
can
you're
be
not
thrown
helping
out
me.
immediately. There's a lot of things to think through. I know you can do this. I know the American people can do it. And so please, as you go out this weekend, understand you can go out, you can be outside, you can play golf, you can play tennis with marked balls. You can go to the beaches if you stay 6 feet
it's all
apart.
locked down.
But remember that is your space, and that's a space that you need to protect and ensure that you're social distance for
With
others.
a gun.
Thank you.
Well, that was unhelpful.
Start by Dr. Burks, if I could have you stay here for just a moment or two.
And I'm just going to
Zeke,
shove
I
her
believe
out of
you
the
emailed me a
way
question about
so
nursing
that I
homes
can
and testing
totally
this
hog
morning.
the
If you
media
want to
time.
ask it, I'll have Dr. Burks
So
give
I'll
you
just
an
deny
answer.
things, and then you guys will just spend all day reporting that.
Last week, or sorry, 2 weeks ago, you and the Vice President Governors, you wanted 100% of nursing home residents and staff tested within 2 weeks. Most states aren't going to meet that. Some 2 weeks later haven't even started to try, saying it's impractical and infeasible. Are you disappointed? And also, what are the consequences of that inaction?
No, I know many of you don't know me. I'm a very aspirational and hopeful person that like to put out challenges because I think that's what needs to be done. You know, we've had it in the Open Up America guidance where we asked them to test all the nursing homes, nursing home residents and workers. We know that that group is very susceptible and has significant mortality. And so we continue to ask the states. We always look at the side of the ones who haven't been able to get it done. There are some that are getting it done. And I think what we will learn is from those who were able to get it done.
We never learn from other states. We are not about that, Dr. Scarf.
To ensure that not only we have the baseline testing, but we continuously test the workers within the homes to prevent any asymptomatic spread back to the residents once we show they're negative. We only have 1 million nursing home residents.
Just assume everyone has it
way over
and head to church, everybody.
1 million people per week, getting closer to over 2 million people a week. So over that 4 million per 2 weeks.
I can't understand her with the mask on.
I just that 1 million of those could be our nursing home residents. I think week over week as we see testing expand, it's not going to just be, and it's why I keep coming back to this, it's not the number of people you have tested.
It is.
We see this all the time with other diseases. We have a lot of worried well that will come back frequently to get tested. We want to test, and we want states testing.
We can't get tested. The worried well can't get tested in a lot of the country.
Susceptibility to worse outcomes.
I was at a drive-through
like
testing facility yesterday. I couldn't get tested, and there was nobody else.
Such as prisons, meatpacking plants.
Yeah, meatpacking. So when I took Kevin Lee daughter for her test yesterday, and that only after begging a doctor who was very cool. I mean, there's no problem with it. But the regular people were like, is she symptomatic? And I was like, yeah, she's really sick. She's got a terrible cough. And they're like, why are you coughing? And I was like, I'm not. And I didn't just cough into my hand. That was my daughter. Hold on, she's right here. Hello, this is Kevin's daughter. I'm very sick. See, the kids know to cough into their... Okay, I could go on with that vignette for about 20 minutes.
Never be discouraged by those who can't get it done. We should be encouraged by those who have shown us that it can be done. And then on the governor's calls, we have those governors present to the other governors how they did it.
And the governors don't learn from each other.
Places of worship.
Anyway, at the drive-through testing facility, nobody in front of us. We drove in, open parking lot, nobody in front of us. It took us about 10 minutes maybe to get done. Nobody behind us. And 7 or 8 healthcare workers there testing people, waiting to test people with, I'm assuming, the stuff to test people. Nobody around because you have to have symptoms. But we've all been inside for so long that a lot of us don't have symptoms.
Every state to do that by community,
but
by
at least
zip
asymptomatic
code.
people can't carry it.
Because I really firmly
So
believe a knowledgeable community can really make judgments for themselves. I think
She's
each
aspirational.
one of the leaders in the faith community should be in touch with their local health departments so that they can communicate to their congregates. Certainly people that have significant comorbidities, we want them protected. I know those houses of worship want to protect them. And so really ensuring that maybe they can't go this week if there's high number of COVID cases. Maybe they wait another week. But there is a way to social distance like you are here in places of worship. And I think what we're trying to say with the CDC guidance is there's a way for us to work together to have social distancing and safety for people so that we decrease the amount of exposure that anyone
You guys
would
all
have
need to be more social distancing.
And I say it that way because I know all of you and all of Americans, if they didn't feel well, they wouldn't go to church that day.
That is not true. Not true at all. There's a lot of idiots in this country.
Yeah, Dr. Brooks, can you comment on
Kaylee's all like,
study
I can talk. No.
This Lancet study that suggests, again, that the drug could cause heart problems and even increased mortality. The president's obviously said that he's been taking it. What's your recommendation?
Well, allow me just to walk the
fence. That drug as a prophylactic?
Well, first, I think the FDA has been very clear on their website about their concerns about hydroxychloroquine, particularly when it's combined with immaculide. And I think you see that in the study. And I think the study, although it is open label.
And about the president.
And it is. I tell you what I take home from the Lancet study, and I hope everyone here does, in addition to what you just commented on. It clearly shows
the
comorbidity that puts individuals at more risk.
Oh, really? That's what it shows.
It's one of our clearest study because there were so many tens of thousands of individuals involved that the doctors.
And that risk increases 33 to 45% if you take hydroxychloroquine. She's not going to say that.
Risk for that. There are still controlled trials going on, both for prophylaxis and pre-exposure prophylaxis, as well as controlled trials looking at, in a hospital setting, how these drugs do. And I think those are still pending. But I hope everyone looks at those comorbidities. And for all of our millennials out there, they get data like this. Look at that. Go through and see if your parents or your grandparents have any of those things and make sure you're helping protect them. I'm really worried about people in my generation because we're very social at times. And we have a habit of forgetting social distancing or forgetting that glasses. And when you're eating, you can't eat in a mask. So even if you're far enough apart, you have to watch every utensil, everything you touch.
Her generation is more social
than the other
generation?
I'm asking our great generation of millennials to get some YouTube videos about how to do picnics outside with your friends and still protect everyone and still ensure that there's no co-contamination of food and utensils. I think there's a way to do it, but I want it explained in a YouTube video.
Governance by YouTube.
Dr. Brooks, I know you need to get back to work. So
hey, thanks for watching us on YouTube, everyone.
You can do a follow-up with me. And wait, actually,
No, Doctor, come back, Dr. Scarf.
Okay, you can go ahead. But before I start my portion of the briefing, there were just a few things I wanted to note for you all.
That would be starting the briefing.
Some of those very encouraging graphs we saw where the states moved from red and orange to green, and we saw the United States increasingly become green. It's encouraging to see that America's reopening alongside that with
the colors.
Home-based data from Home-based noting that 2/3 of America's small businesses are opening.
Moving from red to
green. An Open Table
green.
study said Americans are now starting to dine out again. Another home-based study, 67% of local food and drink businesses are open. Apple is saying Americans are driving and walking at near normal levels. And Google mobility data reflects the same. So it's encouraging to see America start to reopen and the great work President Trump has done for the faith community going into this
rooting
weekend.
For a second
we have
wave?
the First Amendment. It's very important that we protect
those are
that.
not.
And these churches, these synagogues, these mosques, they are essential, and President Trump underscored that. And finally,
that's not
before
okay.
getting started, I wanted to note that the president, as you all are well aware, donates his salary to various initiative and parts across the federal government. In this quarter, he will be donating his salary to HHS, Health and Human Services, to develop new therapies for treating and preventing COVID-19 so that we can safely reopen. Here is the check.
So that's $4 per dead American per capita.
That will go directly from President Trump and his paycheck that he does not take, but rather donates it to various noble initiatives, including in honor of COVID this time.
He should get a Nobel Prize
and
for
the
that
studies underway.
alone.
He'll be donating it to HHS. And with that, I will take questions from you all.
Haley?
Yes.
A couple of questions to follow up on the president's announcement. First, just to clarify, he came out and said, I'm calling upon governors to allow churches and places of worship to open up right now. Dr. Birx just said in areas where they have high cases of COVID-19, maybe they should think about waiting a week. So which is it, and why the mixed messaging?
That's up to the governors. As it's said in our guidance, we note that while
Then
many types
why
of
did the president
gatherings are
say he
important
would
for civic and
overrule the
economic well-being,
governors?
religious worship has particularly profound significance to communities and individuals, including as a right protected by the First Amendment. The president wants to see these communities open. Dr. Birx was integral to making these guidelines, and they lay out a pretty clear path for faith communities to reopen.
The president says he's going to override the governors.
Good.
Under what authority would he do that?
She's great.
To your point, he said several weeks ago, this is all up to the governors.
Well, I think you're posing a hypothetical, and I think we can all hope that we see governors.
No,
You're posing
that's not a
Though.
hypothetical.
You're assuming that governors are going to keep churches shut down and keep mosques shut down and keep synagogues
On the recommendation
shut down.
of the
That is a hypothetical
CDC
question,
and Dr. Scarf.
We'll leave it to these faith
So are you
communities
telling
to
them to go against the
reopen.
CDC?
Governors don't
We'll
listen
leave
to
it to
him.
faith
He's gonna
communities to
override their
reopen. And
authority.
Kristen, I think we can all hope that this Sunday people are allowed to pray to their gods across this country. That's a good thing.
And since you can only
And I'd
pray to
also
God in
note
church,
There's detailed guidance in here about the way that you can clean your facilities, promote social distancing. So this is something that we should all look at and be thankful that we are encouraging these faith communities to reopen and do so in a safe way. And we'll leave it to parishes
have
to
church
open
in a safe way?
fashion.
Yes.
what if you don't have Safeway in your neighborhood?
Does the White House now support these churches that are defying governor's orders and opening up?
The president's been very clear. He wants churches to reopen. He wants them to do it safely. He wants them to do
yes.
it in accordance with our guidance. It's laid out very detailed. It's posted now, so you can all take a look through it. And he wants to see all of those churches open in a safe
If the
fashion.
governor does not allow that, does the White House support churches defying these executive orders?
The president's been very clear. He wants to see churches reopen in accordance with his
The
guidelines.
answer is yes.
So yes?
I gave you an answer. The president would like churches
Is that
to
a
reopen
yes?
and do it in
What
accordance with the
specific
guidelines.
provision of federal law allows the president to override a
The
governor's
president will
decision?
strongly encourage every governor to allow their churches to reopen. And boy, it's interesting to be in a room that desperately wants to seem to see these churches and houses of worship stay
The
closed.
president said
Yes,
that he has
yes.
that.
Haley, I object to that. I mean, I go to church. I'm
Yeah.
fine to go back to church. The question that we're
Literally.
asking you, and
Ba-dum-bum.
would love to have asked the president and Dr. Birx, is it safe? And if it's not safe, is the president trying to encourage that, or does the president agree with Dr. Birx that people should wait?
Jeff, it is safe to reopen your churches if you do so in accordance with the guidelines, which are laid out.
No, that's not what
very
Dr. Scarf
stringent
said.
detail here about promoting hygiene practices, and there are 5 bullet points, and cloth face coverings. If social distancing is not possible, it's recommended. Intensifying cleanings, promoting social distance. We lay them out meticulously. So I am thankful that we have a president
So
that
these
celebrates
guidelines
the
are
First
different than they
Amendment, the
were
same amendment
when the
that gives you
CDC
all the
tried to
ability
publish
ask me
them a few
questions
days ago.
is there to have the freedom of worship, so imams and pastors can go to their churches, can go to their places of worship, and
These
can
are the old
celebrate what is a
guidelines.
First Amendment right in this country, which is to pray to your God.
Is the
and to
facility in a
practice your
community
faith.
no
We
longer
should know.
requiring
Too. I just
significant
want to follow up
mitigation?
by saying we celebrate that too.
And so we
Certainly
should
the
be
First
thankful that there are
Amendment.
guidelines.
So the White
allow
House
us to
wouldn't let
celebrate
those be
faith and
published.
behavior.
We're not asking you if the president
This is why.
and people are allowing Americans to pray. That's not the
To
question.
gather
that
in
people
their
are
places
asking
of
here.
worship, to attend church services, to pray together. And the president has laid out a clear path. The CDC
'Cause praying
has
by
laid
yourself
out a
does not
clear
work.
path for this to take place, for our First Amendment to be exercised in a way that is safe and robust. And that is something that is a good thing, and I'm thankful that we have a president who celebrates the First Amendment and
First
helps it to
Amendment
be
also
celebrated
has
in
the
its
freedom of
fullest and
speech, so
most
fuck
robust
you,
way possible.
Kaylee.
Chanel.
Thank you, Kaylee. I'd like to switch gears asking about President Obama. We had a
OAN.
does the president, would interesting article from Joel Pollak this morning.
No face mask. Standing in the back of the room.
She's
not supposed to be there.
Considered pardoning President Obama for illegally wiretapping on towers, illegally spying U.S. citizens, and other potential.
How are we going to pardon Obama?
Potential crimes out there. Has he considered that?
So I have not spoken to the president about that, but who I did speak to about President Obama and unmasking Michael Flynn were the men and women in this room. I haven't spoken to him on that specific point, have spoken to him about the matter generally, and I laid out a series of questions that any good journalist would want to answer about why people were unmasked, and all sorts of questions. And I just wanted to follow up
and why we
with
can't
you
eat
guys
unicorn
on that. Did
meat.
anyone take it upon themselves to pose any questions about Michael Flynn and unmasking the President Obama spokesperson? Oh, not a single journalist has posed that question. Okay.
Flynn's name wasn't
so
that.
I would like to lay out a series of questions, and perhaps if I write them out in a slide format, maybe we're visual learners, and you guys will follow up with journalistic curiosity. So number one, why did the Obama administration use opposition research funded by a political organization and filled with foreign dirt to surveil members of the Trump campaign?
Because it claimed that a foreign adversary was trying to influence our election, which was
Michael
true.
Flynn unmasked, not by the intel community entirely, but by Obama's chief of staff.
He was not. That list is just a list of Obama administration officials who unmasked anybody, and many of them were after Flynn's
this is extraordinary. And
talk with the Russian ambassador was already public.
I can guarantee you I'd have questions in my inbox right now, but apparently Obama's spokesperson
It was already in the
not.
Washington Post.
Why was Flynn's identity leaked in a criminal act? It is a criminal act.
That's
to
a question.
The identity of
That's
Michael
a good
Flynn to the
question.
press,
Why
but
is
it
Obama's
happened.
picture there?
Where are the questions to Obama's spokesperson? Because my team would be running around this building should this have happened under the Trump administration. Why did the DOJ, Sally Yates, learn
because there's
about
no
the
leaks in the Trump
unmasking
administration
from President Obama? So much for going by the book. As Susan Rice said 3 times, thou doth protest too much, Susan Rice. And then finally, question number 5. Why did James Clapper, John Brennan, Samantha Power, and Susan Rice privately admit under oath they had no evidence of collusion while saying the opposite publicly?
No,
it's a
that
long
was
weekend.
conspiracy.
You guys have 3 days to follow up on those questions, and I certainly hope the next
conspiracy
time I ask,
and
some hands
collusion
go up,
are
because
two different.
Obama's
He's going to end it
spokesperson should be
here.
asked those questions,
This is her
because
show.
President Trump's spokespeople certainly would be.
Wow. I need to exercise my freedom of speech again. This is so ridiculous. I don't know if this is better than not having press conferences, but that was that. Yeah, so open up the churches. They're essential because God only lives in churches. And if you pray by yourself, that's not going to work. And don't open the church if there's any COVID-19 in the area, but you have to open the church. So that's the takeaway. Kevin Lee Daughter is apparently making a lot of noise in the kitchen. Sorry if you guys can hear that. Yeah, no, this isn't a hidden agenda. This is wide out in the open, Barbara. This is ridiculous. Good to see you, Barbara, by the way. Trumpsters are going to Trump. Yeah, all of that stuff about Flynn is absolute nonsense. I don't think I still have the things open. We can cover that very quickly. Let's go here. Let's go. I think I've got it in here. Flynn, I do. Okay. Check this out. So this is a letter asking, hey, send us everybody who unmasked. Now, the conversation with General Flynn happened on December 29th. That's the conversation in which General Flynn asked the Russian ambassador Kislyak not to pay any attention to the sanctions, because as soon as Trump was in power, this is in between the election and the transition, as soon as Trump was in power, we're going to get rid of the sanctions, so don't worry about that. He was negotiating as a government official without being part of the government, because President Trump hadn't taken power yet. So, of course, let's see, Charles Grassley and Ron Johnson, Republican senators, sent a letter to Richard Grenell, who's the acting director of the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. Hold on. I have a question here from Kevin Lee Daughter. Give me a second. She didn't have a question. She just wanted to tell me that she loved me. So that was nice. Sorry to make you wait for that. I love you too. So, Anyway, that's what that is. So they sent a letter to William Barr. Everybody knows Bill Barr is the AG. And they said, hey, give us all of the unmaskings done by anybody between Election Day, which, remember, Election Day is the beginning of November. The conversation in question didn't happen until the end of December. So give us everybody who, during that time period, all the way up to Election Day, requested anybody unmasking. So they did. They sent them this big list, and I have that as well. Let's see. This one... this is probably the one right here. Yeah. So, and they got this response back from Grinnell saying, like, look at all these people. But here's the thing. These are everybody who requested. Not that. Everybody who requested from, here's the 30th of December. This is Samantha Power. She was ambassador to the United Nations, 30th December, 2nd of December, 7th of December, 14th of December. 2 requests on the 14th of December, 23rd of December. All of these requests are before Flynn had the conversation. And then you go all the way down to Vice President Joe Biden. He's running for president now. He requested that someone be unmasked on the 12th of January. Well, the thing with that is that the Washington Post had already published the fact that Michael Flynn had lied to the vice president before Joe Biden made that unmasking request. So Joe Biden did not ask for Michael Flynn to be unmasked. These are just everybody who asked to unmask anyone. And here's the central problem with the entire premise of the right wing. You can't be after Mike Flynn by asking for someone to be unmasked, because the whole point of unmasking is you don't know who it is. And that's the right wing for you. Okay, back to you guys. Trump's just going to Trump. Yeah. Shout out. I'll give you a shout out, Donnie. Ah! There you go. Patricia, he's failing. Yes, he is. Thank you, Barbara. Barbara, you're in the new, I think you're in the new credits. Hold on, because we're getting to them very shortly. I had to choose between watching your live broadcast or an episode of the 90 Day Fiancé. Now I'm interested. Now I want to know. Do you know anything about the 90 Day Fiancé?
Yes, I do.
Is it good?
I don't like reality, if that's what it is.
Oh, she doesn't like reality. She lives with me, so you wouldn't either.
It's an American wants to marry a foreigner that they like met online, and then they need the K1 visa to get there, because if you have a fiance, they can be.
I don't know if you guys can hear any of this, but she's describing what the premise of 90 Day Fiancé is.
Before they can get their visa, and like.
So American wants to marry a foreigner, and they have to get a visa. That sounds very bureaucratic. Okay, anyway, so now you guys know why everything in this administration is a joke, and why we need to pardon Obama. Obama's name is not even on the list, by the way. Oh, and of all these people on the list, there's 38 different names with multiple requests. This isn't actually a list of requests made to unmask somebody. This is a list of people that may have seen the names of people that were unmasked. So all these names and not requests, just people that may have received Lieutenant General Flynn's identity in response to a request processed. And like Joe Biden actually filling out the unmasking form, not very likely. And again, this is after everybody already knew that Flynn had a conversation with Kislyak in which he promised that the sanctions would be taken care of. And you know what's amazing is that I haven't heard anyone in the media, right or left wing, take a look at that and actually read it, because it's right here. It explains it. I'll show you guys. Right here. There we go. Below is a list of recipients who may have received Lieutenant General Flynn's identity between 8th of November and 31st of January, all that time. And again, December 29th is when it actually happened. And you can see, let me go back to the other page, this one right here. There we go. So all of these requests, maybe from Samantha Power, or this just maybe stuff that she saw, because she may have made no requests. 11th of January would be the only one that applied, if at all, to Michael Flynn. And again, she wouldn't know that she was unmasking Michael Flynn, so how can you target if you don't know? Oh, anyway, yeah. You enjoy praying, Green Room. No, hey, I'm interested in that show. Anything that has to do like when people could touch each other, I'm in. Freaks me out. It's like every TV show's turned into a horror for me. They touched each other. They kissed. Okay. All right, guys. Cheers to everybody. If you're one of my patrons, thank you for that. And if you'd like to donate directly on PayPal, it just went away, but it says paypal.me/KevinLeeDad. It'll come up again in a second here. I probably won't wait for it. And if you want to become a patron, I love you guys. Go to KevinLeeFather.com. You can become a patron there, like all the new patrons we've had this week. Thank you so much, guys. I'm saying we had one new patron this week. Actually, no, we've had like a different patron every day, which is fantastic. It motivates me, makes me feel special, and I need that right now. I think we all do. Cheers to you guys, and Robin, and Green Room, and Barbara, and Ro, and everybody else in the chat room. If you are one of the patrons or one of the PayPals, you're going to be in the new credits here. And I kind of like the new music. So enjoy.